Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to CIRDAP Knowledge Series 53. So we are going to have another webinar, and the topic is Green Building Infrastructure in Rural Development, Green Principles, Renewable Energy, Adoption, Sustainable Infrastructure Development, and Behavioral Change Initiatives. So today we have with us two speakers from one of the prestigious university from Indonesia, Universitas Gadjah Mada. And our first speaker will be Dr. Rachmawan Budiarto, and the second speaker will be Dr. Sentagi Sesotya Utami. I hope I pronounce both the names correctly. So thank you, sir and madam, for joining with us. Our Director General, Dr. P. Chandrasekhara sir, is on the leave. So our OIC, Officer in Charge, Director Research, Dr. Ganga Dr. Acharya sir is here with us. So now I am requesting our Director Research sir to open the floor for this webinar and do the introduction of the speakers. Sir, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Uren. Distinguished participants, esteemed speakers, colleagues and friends. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this important webinar series organized by the Center on Integrated Rural Development for Asia and the Pacific, CIRDAP. We are honored by your presence and deeply grateful that you have taken this time to join us today. In fact, as you may know, CIRDAP was founded on the vision of strengthening regional cooperation, and this knowledge series reflects our enduring commitment to that mission by bringing together diverse voices from across Asia Pacific. We aim to create a vibrant platform for knowledge sharing, dialogue, and collaboration. In doing so, we not only exchange ideas, but also build bridges that connect research with practice, innovation with policy, and local realities with regional aspirations. As we embark on this session today, let us remember that knowledge is most powerful when it is shared, and cooperation is most impactful when it is inclusive. Dear participants, your enthusiastic participation today is a testament to this collective spirit that drives our region forward. Today, we have two distinguished speakers. As my colleague Uren already mentioned that both speakers are from the University of Gadjah Mada, which is a renowned university in Indonesia. Dr. Rachmawan Budiarto and Dr. Sentagi Utami. Both are structural engineers by profession, by academic training, and extensively engaged in green technology development, particularly for building infrastructures in Indonesia and abroad. Thank you, dear speakers, for sharing your expertise and insights with us this morning. To our participants, thank you for your engagement and curiosity. Together, we are shaping pathways towards inclusive, climate resilient, and sustainable rural development. May this dialogue inspire new partnerships, fresh perspectives, and actionable solutions that resonate across our member countries. On behalf of CIRDAP, I extend my warmest welcome once again and my sincere gratitude to each of you. We look forward to a meaningful exchange and to the collective wisdom that will emerge from our discussions. Thank you so much. Now I welcome our honorable speaker, Dr. Rachmawan Budiarto and Dr. Sentagi Utami for today's deliberation. The floor is yours, Dr. Budiarto.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Uh, we are very happy to have the opportunity to meet you all, although it is from Zoom online, but hopefully in the next futures we can meet together to develop our regions. I'm from Cedsgreeb, and maybe during our presentations from I and also from Dr. Sentagi, you are interested to explore our centers, I write the website link. So today I will present as my gestures of our same strong spirit to develop our regions. And nowadays, these afternoons, if through the green buildings, we have a similar challenge and opportunity, and then we also have this good opportunity. And then I will try to present topics that I think it is not yet popular in our daily life, in the professionals on some, or for example in mass media. So yeah, before I go further in the financing the financing support discussion, I will uh, uh, present, or I show you that about the green building. Uh, Currently, there is no single universally agreed upon the definition of the green building, but uh, through these definitions, then we know that it is our tools in having a better conditions of life in a business and so on so on. Even the green buildings is also has the opportunity, for example, in veterinary, because uh, if we apply the principle of the green building, then we have the opportunity for having a good conditions for our daily life, and for example, veterinary business, agricultural business, and so on, so on. So it is the green building. This is one of the starting point. And then we know that I do not want to explore more detail. We have already know our common challenge, and also it is actually our opportunity to have a role, to have a significant role, to spread a goodness to our community. It is, for example, global warming challenges with it's very complex challenges. It's related very complex, wide scale, and very intensive impact, uh, especially negative impact. One of them, it is not new trend, but we can say that it is new trend in terms of that our new knowledge, that one of the very serious challenges related to the climate change is the event of the heat wave. And for example, we can find so many nowadays, so many references, papers, information, and so on, so on. Or maybe we experienced that. So the heat waves become more serious. For example, in one papers, these papers provide a very bad conditions, where only in the 2023 there is more than 178,000 global deaths due to or related to the heat waves. And if we talk about the rural, if we talk about the rural conditions, then our rural communities also experience equal or even worse heat health outcomes. So compared to the urban area, at least in these papers, in the USA, the research, but we can explore that these tendencies we can find it in some other countries. I present, for example, in this slide, poor communities suffer the most. And in these topics, we can also discuss uh, the topics of, for example, environmental injustice. Uh, and then we can talk about, discuss equity and so on, so on. So the rural community, the rural community populations will be more vulnerable to this heat-related distress due to the pre-existing vulnerabilities. We can mention the poverty, level of knowledge, and something like that. And then if we want to show, or if you want to have an introduction in the visual, then I show you a simplified visual cycle. Means that these cycles representing the worsening situations. So we can, for example, starting from the global temperature rise. That is, for example, for our brother and sister in the rurals, means degradation of the quality of the soil, degradation of the water supply, crop health, and something like that. And if you talk about the extreme heat, for example, the negative impacts will be reduced in work capacity. For example, also reducing crop yields. And then it is not good because it can lower the income. And if we talk about the income decrease, then we start to talk about, for example, uh, uh, the condition that, for example, better building material, for example, like that, will be not affordable anymore, too expensive. Uh, our brother and sister in the villages uh, are forced to use a substandard building, for example, like that. And substandard housing prevents physiological recovery after work and reduce the work capacity. And then it will deepen or deepening the persistent poverty. And then we can see a vicious cycle. For example, in this slide, in tropical rural area. So if we start to focus our discussion in rural housing, we know that the rural housing in our area, in our home country, in our home area, typically has, for example, thin metal roofing with high heat absorption characterizations, poor insulation, limited ventilation design, low thermal mass control, no or very poor passive cooling features, and then due to the very limited financial capability, they or this housing have minimal access to mechanical cooling, even for a very simple mechanical fan. So it is our challenge. So again, the green building, I have already started with this effort in knowing the definition, but I will stress in this area. So by having the green building, by developing the green building, we have the opportunity to minimize the negative environmental impacts, to conserve the resources, and also support the healthy, and also as well as efficient usage of all kind resources over its entire life cycle. So that talking about the green building, it is not only about our effort in reducing carbon footprint, for example. It is not only talking about the energy efficiency, but also we we can have the opportunity to manage a complex our common complex problems. Yeah, actually, not only in the rural, yeah, but also in urban. The condition can be worse. But we can talk about later in other occasions. So again, if we, for example, I want to discuss about the health issue related to green buildings. So not only energy efficiencies, later we can talk about that. For example, the green building and health. The green building had a role uh, in thermal and environmental health protection. So because this type of the buildings, the building with the special design have the opportunity to optimize, for example, indoor environmental quality. When we talk about the high quality indoor environmental, then we can discuss about productivity, for example, like that. So reduce indoor heat stress and humidity, uh, uh, lowering risk of dehydrations, and also improve thermal comfort. For example, like that. So indoor air quality, respiratory health, and also, especially for the tropical context, very important because it is about the resilience and adaptation in tropical context. Natural ventilation, shading, the reflective materials can reduce the reliance or our dependence on air conditioning. It will be very good. For example, in the urban area, where we know there is a phenomena called in island heat island. So green roof, for example, can mitigate urban heat island effects by lowering outdoor temperatures. Uh, it it is the opportunity that we will have by reducing the air conditioning significantly, provide resilient comfort, safe indoor, and so on, so on, and then also well-being and productivity, as I said before. What about in rural, or what about the poverty? If we discuss more about the our common challenge, poverty challenge, poverty reduction or mitigations challenge in rural or urban, of course, these green buildings is one of important tools in breaking the poverty cycle. Because this green building, this type of the building, have capability or have opportunity to manage uh, uh, so many problems related to poverty. For example, because the root cause is, for example, root cause of economic stagnation is, for example, health, energy cost, and also productivity simultaneously, interestingly, in one design of the building. But of course, if we discuss about the green building, the for example the types, the domain of the discussion of the green building is so large. Because yeah, we can categorize the green building in so many ways, but let's say we will categorize the green buildings into 5 types. The first one, the vernacular or bioclimatic group or types. These types have a key approach, passive design, meaning that without implementation of the mechanical tools, for example, by designing good ventilations, by designing or by using a proper window, for example, it will be good. So again, the key approach in the vernacular bioclimatic types is high passive design implementation. So for cooling, for air conditioning, lighting, natural lighting. And then, yeah, of course, there is still cost drivers, but talking about the investment, it can be low or even very low. And if we go to the rural area, so many villages in our area in Asia Pacific show the local wisdom. For example, I using this in Indonesia, for example, rumah panggung. So raised stilts for underfloor cooling. You can type in Google. It is one of the example of the local wisdom, encouraging with a cultural root very strong green buildings. The second types is incremental green retrofit. The investment could be low to moderate because step by step it involves upgrading. We can upgrade the existing substandard housing. Rural, for example, if we want to discuss in the rural area, but of course in urban area. So like tin roof houses with specific green interventions, affordable specific green interventions. So actually, the main key approach is targeted passive, so still passive, targeted passive improvement. Installing roof insulations, adding spatial ventilations could be very good for the air, natural air supply, and so on, so on. And then the third type is then resource efficient, we call it also resource efficient hybrid types. Then we have, for example, a modernization. So a technical improvement. So a modern take on housing, both in rural and urban. And then we integrate or blends industrial efficiency with still passive principles. So when we talk about breaking the poverty cycle, it is actually our opportunity, the sweet spot for the breaking of poverty. So the key approach is balancing between passive design and resource management. Resource means water, and so on, so on. So then we start, for example, using HVAC, but still passive first. Then the second approach is active. We can implement the rain harvesting, basic solar lighting, and so on, so on. And investment depend on the house, but generally we can call it the investment type is moderate. And then the net zero energy building and also smart regenerative buildings. These last two types of green buildings is more complex, involving so many technical improvement with so many tools. Even in the smart regenerative buildings, we then, for example, in a very intensive way, we use IoT, managed water system, lighting, and so on, so on. Investment, of course, could be very high. Then, so again, if we talk about a previous slide, for example, the definitions, although we do not have yet a single definition of green building, then we know that the strategic role is, for example, because we can build, we can retrofitting, we can modernizing the building, then the strategic role is not only health, not only productivity, but also other strategic role, stimulating local supply chains of green building materials for these 5 types green buildings. So if we talk about the rapid urbanization, it is the background, then we can manage them. If we talk about the business model, it can encourage the development of the, for example, energy service companies and other businesses. It promotes local R&D, startup, and so on. So not only for urban area, but also for a rural area. But let's talk about the further discussion. I try to, yeah, just for a starting point, we can discuss, for example, the country comparison of the Indonesia and Bangladesh, for example. Thank you to be host of this webinar. So the challenge, for example, same. Yeah, we have, of course, between these 2 countries, Bangladesh and Indonesia, for example, there is a difference, opportunity, and challenge. But look at that. We share, Bangladesh and Indonesia, we share similar challenge. So, for example, the green building is still seen as luxury, for example, or especially in residential sector. And also, the challenge in Indonesia, at least the perspective or the factual, it's still high. The challenge is, for example, high or higher initial cost of green buildings. So we want discuss further. If we go, for example, comparing the Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Thailand, for example, like that. I'm sorry that I still didn't have time to compare all of the country, the regions of the CIRDAP. Maybe next time, if we have similar good opportunity. Then, for example, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Thailand, there is a similarity, the common opportunity. For example, in these 4 countries, there is improvement of government policy, rising market demand, especially in the urban, because people or the businessmen or industrial can see the operational cost savings, for example, like that. And then in these 4 countries, there is a development of building code and also certification system, and also growing implementation of those aspects. But the challenge, same. It is, or there are limitation of government budget, for example, to accelerate the development of green building in urban and also in rural. General lack of public awareness, including related stakeholders, commercial stakeholders, something like that. Disconnect between perceived and actual costs. I have a special slide for this. So, disconnect or the difference between perceived and actual costs, and also the gap between a creation of progressive policies and their consistent and widespread enforcement. It is the challenge of we can find in those 4 countries. What about the perceived and actual cost? And then and also we can compare with the benefits. So perceptions, perceived risk, perceived cost, people say that having green building or building a, a house with the design, implementing the green building principle could be very, very expensive. Maybe people talk about 20% or even 30% higher. But so many data shows a different fact. Yeah, of course, there is a case that maybe the actual cost is also high, but so many data show the trend that we, or at least in some countries, and also some typical buildings, it is only 2 to 7% higher initial investment. But look at that. By having or by allocating 2 or even 7% budget for higher budget for investment, then we have the opportunity to have a sales that is data show us averagely 8% to 20% more rental rates that could be higher. Maintenance costs could be reduced. Lower cost per square meter reduced. For energy, for example, it is good when we discuss about energy transition, carbon emission, carbon footprint, and so on, energy efficiency, less energy, even 25 to 30%. Sometimes, depend on the design, could be even 35% in nearly zero energy building could be, for example, 50% reductions. What about the water consumption? We talk about the resource management in one type of the green building, the third type of the green building. We can also reduce water consumptions. For example, the data even show 39% reduce. So, but the keywords I show you, there is a key factors that can have a strong impact on the cost. So design timing. It would be better if we have or if we integrate the green features during the pre-design. So already in the starting phase of the plan to build a green building. Material sourcing, for example. We can take a local material, for example. It is also good for small, medium enterprise, actually. And also, when we have the opportunity, we then try to mainstreaming the passive design. Yes, it is interesting challenge because it is also about the mindset. Because, for example, having passive design in one house, maybe it could be a perception that that house or that building is not modern. It is so old modist, for example, like that. Some people talk about the modernization. Some people talk about the better level in the social status if the building or the house has many air conditions. It is factual. In the community, we can hear that, we can see that. So talking about the limitations of the budget from the government, then one of the strategies is to increase the private sectors. Then we start to discuss the financing. One of our options, strategic options, is to encourage the private sectors, increase the role of the private sector, because this private sector have, at least if we categorize that 5 strategic role. So creating market demand and willingness to pay, developer, retailers, industrial leaders can cultivate the consumer demand. For example, for certified green spaces, for example, like that, especially in the urban area. And also important, mobilizing capital beyond public budget. We know that our countries with limited financial capability still have other priorities than developing the green building. It is our challenge. It is a our common challenge. Then private sector can mobilize capital beyond public budgets. And also, they can drive the innovation and reducing the cost. Even the private sector could be a policy enablers and partners. If we talk about the capacity buildings, for example, like that can be very expensive. If we allocate public budget, for example, like that, then the private sector have the capability in or on the capacity building. So private sector is the capacity builders also without public spending. So interesting if we can encourage our friend in private sector. But remember, to encourage the private sector, we need to know what is incentives needed by our friend, brother, and sister in private sector. For example, financial incentive, market-based incentive, capacity and knowledge incentive, for example, like that. Interestingly, for example, if we talk about the capacity and knowledge incentive, so talking about the incentive, we do not necessarily talking about the financial incentive. For example, by having a recognition program, national awards, labeling scheme is could be very strategic because labeling schemes can increase the market visibility and brand value for private sector, for developers, for example. So it is an example non-financial incentive. Of course, we have a homework to develop financial incentive, tax incentive, subsidies, grants, tax breaks, import duty reduction. For example, market-based incentive, we can develop fast-track approval for green building projects, gross floor area for concession, and so on, so on. But what about the urban and rural area? We know that there is a significant difference between urban and rural areas. We can try to characterize it. Market structures, we got a different project size, income profile, access, credit, and etc. But it's different between urban and rural area variables or conditions have the impact on the financial area. So there is a financial implication for this different. For example, if we talk about the project size, for example, like that, in urban, we can have opportunity to talk about or to have a plan, a very nice plan to build a large commercial and residential complexes. But in rural area, usually we have only individual houses or small clusters. Then the financial implications is different. In urban area, the projects can attract the institutional investor, banking, big private sector, and so on. But in the rural, we have to develop a breakthrough. For example, through aggregation mechanism. We can combine one program with a domain, for example, 500 or 1,000 small houses with a spatial affirmation through equity approach. then we combine that in one program. For example, like that. Income profile, for example. Formal employment, we can find easily in the urban area. Predictable salary, predictable income, but in rural, seasonal, agriculture-based, informal income. So that if we talk about the need to develop the financial support for this challenge, then we need alternative credit models. What about the collateral? In rural, there is a weak collateral increases the lending risk. Lending risk. Risk. It is not only perceived risk, but actual risk in rural areas. So we then talk about the de-risking and so on. So I give you a tables. I give you the PDF. Then you can access this file. Of course, I'm very happy if you give a feedback, and then we start to talk about our challenge, a common challenge, and then we talk about, for example, collaboration and so on. So risk profile, for example, like that. Policy focus. In policy focus, for example, we talk about the policy. There are already, for example, a very nice policy about the carbon mitigation, energy efficiency, talking about the building house, but it is focusing on, if it's scrutinized, going deeper in the policy, actually it focus on the urban area. What about in rural area? We still have climate adaptations, not only climate adaptations, but health protection, disaster relations combined with poverty challenge. So rural finance must combine mitigation and also adaptation funding. So if we talk about further as a type, credit profiling, collateral, regulation, for example, yes, of course, we have the policy, but we can talk that there is still regulatory void. Most building codes do not apply to or aren't enforced or not appropriate for houses or building in rural area. What about the informal economy, seasonal income, and so on, so on? No formal credit history that is obligatory if we want to access a modern services of banking, for example, like that. Then my last slide is I want to end my presentations as a gestures of my patience in working in the rural areas. So it is a starting point, actually. It is not a solutions, of course. It is the starting point. So we have a very interesting challenge, bridging the gap. Financial mechanism, for example, must move away from traditional mindset of financial support for traditional banking services toward more inclusive green finance. What about that? For example, we can develop the green microfinance and also seasonal loans, because rural residents often earn income in cycles in the harvesting period. Because the traditional monthly markets, for example, do not work, do not appropriate. Blended finance and de-risking. We can combine public and also philanthropic resource of money to absorb the first layer of the risk. And then if the first layer of the risk could be the risk by this blended finance, then we can invite the private sector to have a role, to have a bigger role. And lastly, we can also make a collaborations to, for example, increasing community-based green bonds, for example, like that, and so many innovative innovation in financing mechanism. Thank you very much, and again I'm very happy to have this opportunity, and your feedback will be very valuable for not only for my presentation but for our common challenge in our area. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for giving us a so comprehensive presentation. Now I'm requesting Dr. Sentagi Sesotya to start her presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hurain, for the opportunity. Also, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are very grateful for this invitation. Me and Pak Rachmawan are colleagues from Gadjah Mada, and also we work in the same Center of Development for Smart and Green Building. So Pak Rachmawan already mentioned a lot about, actually, those are the agendas that we're looking at in our 2026 year. And as mentioned by the board of representative of CIRDAP in the opening of this talk today, that this session is actually very good for us to engage collaboration in the future. And so therefore, thank you for giving me the opportunity to a little bit look in what Cedsgreeb have been doing the past 2 years. And not taking aside the challenge in rural areas, but actually we started by looking at urban areas, because most of the challenges in, especially in net zero emission building, are implementation in buildings of urban areas. However, there will be some evidence that we will share later. We have a lot of findings that the major cause of this zero emission, the difficulty of zero emission reduction in overall, not only in urban area, but rural area, is due to residential buildings. So this might bridge from the urban area to the rural area. Now, because this is a very short talk, this talk is actually accumulation or kind of a comprehensive study that we have done, and we have published in several of our books. You can visit our website, as Pak Rachmawan also already provided, and also in the chat box. And then if you need the book and everything, we can provide it as well. However, unfortunately, it's still mostly written in Bahasa, and so we will find the way to translate it in English. But we will start mostly with this major book. We are writing our latest book. It's soon to be published. It's about the zero emission building, but it started with our work related with the concept of sustainability building, and then going down to green building. This green book and the brown book is everything about the green building implementation in Indonesia, and also in our university. And then we head up to a smaller or a more focused part of the green building indicators, which is the energy efficient building. So here we propose the idea how to, or steps or strategy towards achieving a zero energy building. So this is in overall what we are looking at. Now, saying that what is Cedsgreeb actually doing is because this is an organization that we want to kind of connect across academia, industry, as what Rachmawan had in his talk about the private sector, and also government. So we have two units that are very strongly working, the unit of research and the other one is in advocacy. And we want to support our national target here. First, maybe we want to look at what's happening in the urbanization issues, because by the year of 2050, it has been mapped out that more than 800 million people in the Asia Pacific are moving to the cities. And this is something that we need to immediately deal with. And also, if we look at the ecological footprint per person now, it's way more than the biocapacity per person. So now the biocapacity reserve divided by the deficit is actually in a minus score or minus value. And the red area is including Indonesia, or including most of the area in Asia Pacific. If we want to look more, what is the ecological footprint? So maybe all of you already understand that that is actually the biological area on land, air, earth, all the resources required to fulfill what a human is consuming, and also the area that is required to accommodate the waste that is generated from the human activity. So this is something that is actually very challenging. And then why we talk about sustainable cities, why we talk about sustainable rural areas, because we believe that in Indonesia, it has been mapped out the national goal to have the enhanced NDC 43.2% with international support by the year of 2030 is by having cities as the central actors. Again, I'm not putting aside rural areas. We will come to that part when we look at that the most contributing is actually from the residential area. But urban areas are responsible for majority energy use and emission. However, we have a good initiative in Indonesia. It's an integrated sustainable Indonesia movement, ICEAM. It has many stakeholders. It has been involving more than 200 cities, 200 regencies in Indonesia and partnerships as well. And they are trying to monitor the sustainability condition of their cities. One of them is by moving towards design of a future city innovation concept, which is a smart city concept. Now, the smart city components here actually have all of the entity needed for having a sustainability development condition. If we talk about the smart city components, their energy efficiency is one of them, and then there's renewable energy. So both of them are dealing with SDG 7. And then we talk about waste management, responsible consumption. This is SDGs 12. We talk about sustainable ecosystem. This can be SDGs 13 and also SDGs 15, life of land. But what we are focusing in Cedsgreeb is actually the part of the city component is the green infrastructure, how to have more and more net zero building with renewable energy, with green materials, with green building concept being implemented in these areas. Now, having said that, we can say that our role is for this past 3 years, since we are initiated, is the filling the policy and knowledge gaps between building sector's emissions and then aligning outcomes within the Indonesian NDGs targets, and then also identifying pathways for building decarbonization. So you can all see here that there are many work needs to be done in order to fulfill this role. So far, this is our methodology. We are, of course, very, very welcome if any of you want to join our team and then also provided more new methodology. But I think the most challenging work was what we did visiting more than 10 cities, more than 10 rural areas in Indonesia. So some of them are already big cities, some of them are still emerging cities, changing or moving from rural areas, becoming cities. We visited them and then we find evidence on a true scale of building related emissions. We try to measure the energy consumption. We find the index energy consumption for typical buildings, not only for commercial buildings, but also for residential buildings. And as we can say, actually, our work is more like a triple helix approach. We have university collaboration here. We have industrial or private sector. But Rachmawan mentioned a lot about the industrial sector or the private sector. And also the government are involved in the very beginning of our work. The engagement with the government, of course, we are trying to look not only the dialogues as mapping out what are the standards having now, the regulation that we have now, but also planning for future framework implementation to a broader and a wider impact in Indonesia. This is all of our exercise. So we want to show that the work that we have done, included lots and lots of collaboration, and we are very, very welcome. Now, I want to tell a little bit, hopefully there's still some time for this, the result that we have been doing so far, and this is recorded also in all of our books. So first, we've been mapping that the building emissions are growing faster than the other major sectors, even it's already rising or equal with the industry contribution. Now, what about the transportation? Of course, that is still our main issue because, there are still less of electrical vehicles, etc., used in Indonesia. But the building sector steadily rose from 29% in 2011 to 36% in 2021. If we look at it closely with all of the types of buildings, then we can see that residential is contributing 3.9% toward the rate of building emissions in Indonesia. Now, residential building, 3.9%. Where is it from? Is it from only fossil fuel combustion? Turn out this is only tracking so far. What we can do is the energy use. We have not yet been able to capture the embodied carbon that is starting from design of the building, and then construction of the building, including transport of the building materials, including using prefabrication materials, green materials, those key factors that have been highlighted also in Rachmawan's presentation. It is therefore very important for us to look at the whole life cycle of a building. We have already some standards, green building standards in Indonesia that look at a complete life cycle, including until the demolish of the building. But so far, we have not yet been able to really monitor, to really calculate the energy emission, the carbon emission from this building, including also the energy usage. Now, a little bit more about the residential fossil fuel combustion. Residential and non-residential building sector drives demand for electricity and heat, especially from operational emission, and then transport of new building, as I have mentioned, industrial process to produce the new building material. This is these are some agendas that we are still looking forward in our work in this year 2026 until our roadmap in 2030. We are trying to achieve most of our outputs or our outcomes of fulfilling with the SDGs goals, which is ended in 2030, and also our Indonesian NDC in 2040. Now, again, it is important to look at the entire life cycle carbon of a building, okay? The embodied carbon, the operational carbon. How do we do this? We try to map it out in our building. So we look at the life cycle carbon emission. We've looked at the upfront side, we look at the recurrent side, we look at the end of life side. And also, so far, we have seen that for green building aspects or for green building implementation, maybe what we can really improve for the emission reduction or even for energy reduction is on the operational side, okay? Now, having said that, let's look a little bit more on the direct and indirect emission attribution of these buildings in Indonesia. This attribution have already mapped out in the book of roadmap towards implementation of green building in Indonesia in the year 2023. This is the book that we collaborate with the Ministry of Public Work and Public Housing at that time, was under the same ministry, and also the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. And so here we consider that indirect emission, especially electricity use, will show more accurate perspective of residential and commercial building sector's carbon footprint. This is our expectation. However, embodied emission is still not factor yet. This is where, you know, we have to look more on the strategic role of private sector, as have mentioned in the previous presentation. Most emission in building sectors can be attributed indirect emission from electricity use. We have all of the numbers. You can look at it from gas, from the fossil fuel, from LPG, from biogas, from electricity. And also we can look at the building types or the building sector, commercial buildings, government or public buildings, and also from residential buildings. This is already all mapped out. Now, having said that, actually, one of the strategy that is most important is including the forestry and other land uses, follow strategies. This is more on the carbon offset strategy. The follow is something that we are looking at in Indonesia now. While follow represents the backbone of Indonesian mitigation efforts, the rapid growth of energy emissions make the energy sector the most critical challenge to achieve the long-term low energy carbon development. Looking at the follow initiatives or strategies so far, we have seen that we are trying to reduce 314 carbon emission reduction. And then from that amount, 13% can be achieved by implementing green building strategies, which is a majority in energy efficient buildings. And then if we look at that, how to achieve a more energy efficient building is by having more efficient appliances and lighting system. So now we are talking about more technical a part of having more energy efficient or more green building implementation. If we look at the building types and the emission levels, we have proposed so far baseline building, low emission building, net zero operational carbon building, until a negative emission building. These concepts have been provided later on in our new book, and what become part of the green building strategies, as have mentioned also in the previous presentation, is the active design, the passive design, behavior change, and also new renewable energy integration. Rachmawan also mentioned that passive design is like the backbone of achieving a low emission building. But the key point or the key factor is the passive design have to be supported by green materials, by this private sectors, by industry that can actually track this green material or track the embodied carbon emission. Now, Indonesian regulation, we already have lots and lots of regulation related with the low carbon development. Ultimately, the framework demonstrates that green building regulation is not merely about compliance, but it's all about the strategic acceleration of decarbonization and a sustainable urban development. Unfortunately, the most happening of the energy, carbon emission is still in the urban areas. But if we look closely in the green building regulation in Indonesia, the green building regulation in Indonesia actually already provided many technical or practical strategies to succeed in to make the green building implementation succeeded. The technical specification of HVAC system, maybe in Indonesia, is pretty similar with Bangladesh, with India, and other countries. We highly rely on ventilating and air conditioning. And then also lighting, insulation. There are lots of technical specification that architects or building designers can use it as their guideline towards a better and a green passive design, using sustainable materials, ensuring the performance baseline. Now, certification is also something that is become a trend in Indonesia, not only because we start to really understand the importance of avoiding the climate change, the importance of not only being aware but do the movement in helping the earth to avoid further damage in our due to the climate change. Also because there's a lot of investment from private sector from outside of the country that are heavily looking at the importance of green building. Now, if we look at more deeply in the policy, we have mapped out there are actually 6 entities very important in succeeding the green building implementation is related with the regulatory measures, building assessment techniques and technologies, and then financial instruments. Some of them already mentioned in the previous presentation, economic instruments, capacity building, and then the overall performance. Indonesia building decarbonization is supported by all of these comprehensive measures. And this is what we are looking at and we want to support in all of these entities. Technological interpretation, for example, we have highlighted the interventions in the heating, ventilation condition, in the lighting system. You can read our presentation later on and go into more detail, like how many energy consumption can be reduced. For example, using air-cooled chillers, it can be reduced 30 to 50%. And then if you use LED for the lighting system, it can reduce 75% of the energy usage. If you use daylighting, it can reduce the energy reduction by 60% and so on and so forth. So these are some technological intervention that we have mapped out in mechanical ventilation as well. But this is most important is that we do not how do you say it? We still try to fulfill, or we have to fulfill one of the requirement in green building criteria, which is the indoor health comfort. So we still look at the fresh air rates that is needed. We still look at the temperature baseline that is required, and so on and so forth. Not only trying to reduce the energy consumption, or not only try to reduce the carbon emission. And then as a summary from all of these findings that we have so far in our 2-3 years work, we have found some key findings. First of all is that new building requirements needs to be fostered to zero carbon construction or zero carbon planning. And later on, if the building already exists, it needs to be a zero carbon building operational until a zero carbon building demolish work. And also there are some key findings related with establishing maybe not a new building standards, but maybe more technical guidelines, more what you call it, standards or requirements or regulation that's related with the private sector, and also maybe with findings from research that can be implemented in the green building standards or regulation itself. We want to support the transform in the energy market. This is our agenda in 2026. We want to strengthen the workforce and also chain supply and for the entire life cycle of the building. And also we want to expand access to the capital. So this is why we had the previous talk about the financial support. Now in overall also, if we look at those 4 or 6 entities, we had the regulatory measures, the economic measure, the standard measures, the advice and leadership measures, then this is what we will be doing in Indonesia case study. We will try to implement most of our Indonesian regulation, including inside it, the building energy codes. And then also for the market issue, we will have more role from the private sectors. For the information measures, we will map out and outreach our green building council, our green building, what you call it, initiators, and also other center of excellence that are working in green building and smart building. So then together we could provide, for example, a policy brief, work in the advocacy side towards the government, and then having a leadership towards public awareness campaign about energy efficiency, and furthermore about carbon emission reduction in Indonesia. All of these strategies, all of these ideas have been put inside this book. Hopefully it can be published soon, and we invite all of you to what you call it, enjoy the book later, and hopefully we can also continue with further discussion regarding this matter. I think that's all I can have for this talk. I will give back the time to Mrs. Hureng Janan. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, ma'am, Dr. Sentagi, and also Dr. Rachmawan. So it's actually these 2 presentation is very unique one, and it's though we know about the green building or green economy or blue economy, but we just had the general knowledge, but these are very comprehensive, and it is, though it's based on the sustainable cities, but it is easily replicable towards the sustainable rural areas also. So now actually we have some questions in the chat box. We are opening the Q&A session or the discussion session. Already some of the one of the question has been answered by Dr. Rachmawan, but for the sake of other participants, I'm reading that question from Mr. Shahzad. He is asking what financial mechanisms can support small rural housing clusters that are not attractive to large investors. Could digital platforms or pooled financing help aggravate rural housing projects for investment? Although Dr. Rachmawan, you have answered to him, but I'm requesting you again answer this question for the sake of other participants also. Sir, it's the questions towards you, Rachmawan.
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting question. Yes, for example, the digital services is very interesting. It can be, for example, a tools to manage the limitation of the conservative physical services in institutional financing. Then we can offer the digital services. But as I write in the chat, we must integrate this with the digital literacy programs, because we must combine that. Without that, it will be negative impact also. And then one of the principle of the financing mechanism in the rural area is aggregation mechanism. We can combine, for example, the financing support for say 100 or 500. So I mean in the area, one area, and then we can combine it in one's financial support scheme. Blended financing, for example, then we can invite the other financial resource, not only for government. So blended finance and also combining commercial and non-commercial approach finance, and then also digital. It will be appropriate, but do not forget a program to increase the digital literacy.
The next question is how the common people perceive the greenhouse. Is it the same that you articulate or it utterly different? Any of you can answer.
Bu Sentagi, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So
okay, Dr. Sentagi. Okay.
yeah, it's actually still a very challenge in our country for common people to accept green building, because if we really look at the condition in Indonesia, green building is still in our what you call it in our country is heavily on trying to reduce the energy consumption, electricity consumption. However, in poor area or common people, they still believe that their buildings or residential buildings are not using a lot of electricity. So why do I have to go with the green building technology, right? Correct. Our electricity provided from our country is also still cheaper than if we have to implement a renewable energy technology. So it has become our challenge. The way we try to say it is that we're not going to the common people by using all of these indicators from green building certification or green building standards or regulation, but we come to them through green building values. Green building values. And one of the green building values that we see so far, not only about electricity usage, is actually about waste management. It has become a major problem in our country. Major problem in our country. And waste management or waste is something happening every day. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be how do you say? It's something that unconsciously happening because of our consumption every day. So we are trying to come to the common people, not only from one aspect, electricity, but also from waste management, from water resources. In many cities in Indonesia now, water is not a free what you call it resources. Before, our water from our wells are still in a good quality for drinking water, but now our wells are not, even in the rural areas, and so we have to purchase the water that has already been water treated. That is again costs something or money. So this is how we go with the green building, not necessarily energy, but the entire green building aspects.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person, he asked two questions. The first question is, what are the lessons learned in practical application of green building at the local level in actually rural areas in poorer countries? And the second part question is, given the widespread poverty and resource constraints among governments and communities, what is your views about the about the practice that combines existing local knowledge of communities with new technology? So any of you, it's open questions to both the speakers.
Okay, this is about technology, but Rachmawan, do you want to say first or?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, for the rural area, the priority is the passive designs, because we must think about the affordability. So then, for example, in practical strategy, for example, then we can go to the village, and then we choose some say 3 or 5 houses there. When the houses implement the passive designs, and then we can go there with a very scientific approach, for example, like that, only to to provide the information. What is the impact of the very simple passive design? It is a local wisdom, but in the modern term, it is acknowledged to be better for example, air condition, lighting, and so on, so on. So it is very important to have, for example, a quantitative proof of the local wisdom-based passive designs. So,
Yes.
and then we can spread out the idea and showing the proof, the quantitative proof that, so look at that. This in the village, there is a 5 very good examples of very simple houses, and it is affordable. So something like that.
Yeah. Let me add up a little bit to that. Actually, that information is available, the quantitative measure of local wisdom practice of passive design in this book. If you can see the red book, it's towards creating a towards creating a zero energy building in Indonesia. So we have mapped out what you call it, local wisdom, best practices in buildings, traditional buildings all around Indonesia. Well, almost all around Indonesia, if I can say. But this is a very good snapshot. Also, not only that we have the data, the quantitative data, we have also the methodology and how to collect those data. So that might be something useful.
Thank you. The next question is from Vasudeva Rao. How much budget is allocated in Indonesia by government for green buildings promotion?
Okay, that's a difficult question. Yeah, maybe I'll have a little bit, and then Pak Ramawan knows more about this part because he's more a government guy. Yeah, so if we look at the effort on how to have green building implemented around Indonesia, it comes from our major ministry is from the Ministry of Public Work and Public Housing. What they have is a regulation. What they have is a regulation to implement green building, but it is a mandatory for public buildings only. So buildings that are owned by the government. It is expected that if the government buildings or the public governments already have these green building practices, then the commercial buildings or private owned building will also, follow the track for having the green building implementation. So
Only just additional informations. I think it is a common our common challenge. So that the government have already program formally, for example, in the regulations or maybe even in the law. But our common challenge is the human resources who can monitor the progress, who can implement the principle of, for example, building code and so on and so on. And that is our opportunity to speed up, to increase the pace in human development or in capacity buildings. And then also, as I said before, one of our common challenge, not in Indonesia, is to encourage the private sectors, because when we only depend on the public budgets, then the progress will be very slow, like today, very slow. But of course, this could be a challenge of the innovation of regulations and something like that. So a fair trade-off between a target and also benefit and something like that. So encouraging the private sector, we can start in the urban area, for example, like that, for luxurious house, for example, like that. Then accelerating this program in the field is our common challenge. So let's we develop the collaboration on that.
Okay, so next question is for Dr. Sentagi. It's how many Indonesian cities are now in ASEAN Smart City Network, ASCN?
Okay. I'm not really sure about that because what we were looking first was in the what you call it in the ISIM, which is more like a internal program in Indonesia. So maybe Pak Ramawan knows the answer. Yeah.
I don't know the exact number but I have a project for projects. One of the city is Makassar. So we have the projects funded by USA, NSF, and also Department of State. Then we work for 4 years there. It is about the renewable, community-based renewable energy and also affordable house. But I'm sorry, I do not know which city exactly in that network. Sorry
Okay,
about
so
that.
next question is from Rosa Fika. Is it affordable? Oh, sorry. Is it affordable to have green buildings for low-income people? It's
Oh yeah,
affordability.
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yeah, yeah, please, yes, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
yes, please, Bu Sentagi.
Yes, actually, this is what we are looking at for the year of 2026. We are trying to create a building model. No, this is what we're doing. Net emission building for tropical areas. For tropical areas. So we're trying to have some collaboration with the private sectors, and this is the challenge. Is not in providing the materials, but actually it's more also in the human perception, the community perception that prefab buildings are tended to look like refugee buildings, like what you call it, disaster buildings, mitigation buildings. Sorry, mitigation for disaster buildings. So they do not look good as a good residential building in its appearance, and also the material for prefab are still having challenges related with the heat comfort, and also what you call it, heat comfort, because the temperature can rise easily in this prefab materials. But we are heading towards that idea in providing a low budget building for low income people. And also, if I'm not mistaken, in the financial part, even the industry now, the private sector, they're trying to work with the banking people or the banking sector to provide loans for low income people, so that they can have their building built not in simultaneously one effort, but they can be built part by part, and that really can happen because it's a prefab, it's a modular materials, different with what we have with the conventional buildings with using bricks and using those kind of stuff. Maybe Pak
Yeah,
Ramawan wants it.
yeah. A simple thing maybe we can also develop in our villages in the rural area, or in general, for example, also in the urban for affordable houses. We can mainstreaming again. So we reverse the trend. We can mainstreaming again using the ventilations and regulate them in the formal regulation. For example, by having a special layout of the housing area and so on and so on, and then trying to impose the obligatory says area of the ventilation, something like that. So and then maybe when I was child, it is often to see, for example, a simple house that has windows, roof with a glass roof in the middle of the house, and it is very simple example of the natural lighting. It is very effective and cheap. So something like that. So then we can try to have a breakthrough by digging more and more in our local wisdom-based design.
So one of my colleague, Dr. Usharani, asked a question. It's for both the speakers. Should rural green buildings aim for full self-sufficiency through solar energy, rainwater harvesting, rooftop gardens, and on-site wastewater treatment? And is this approach feasible in rural contexts?
I don't
Uh,
think.
yeah, please, Bu Sentagi.
Oh, okay.
Oh, me. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
In some, because most of very often I was sent in the rural and also in remote island. Many houses there implement the principle of the rain harvesting due to, for example, the complexity to have energy supply. And if we explore the Google, for example, like that, then we find, for example, uh, a solar cooker, solar desalinator and something like that. So it is a very simple technical approach. And if we combine that with the ventilation and something like that, then we will have a good opportunity in, like my slide before. I show you a third types of the green building design where we can manage the resource, so lighting or waters and something like that.
Okay. Maybe
I,
I'd like to add a little
yeah,
bit more.
yeah, of
Yes.
course.
So, Rachmawan already mentioned the importance of passive design. This is something that we had a problem too, because we started the work due to our due to our what you call it, center of excellence being as an academician side, and we are closely working with the ministry or people in the urban area. Now, we have to go from two sides. There's a green building regulation, there's a green building standard. Then we have to go to the rural area and look at local wisdom or a passive design that have been implemented over there and try to bridge between what is actually the green building criteria saying, does it always have to come with a green building technology? Turn out in many, many years, hundreds of years, our local people in the rural areas have already used all of this green building technology that they say, and it doesn't have to be an advanced technology. It's just the way they build the building and the way they use the resources. And this is actually something that we are trying to bridge, bringing the gap between local wisdom, between passive design in rural areas to the building regulation. Pak Rachmawan also mentioned, understanding the natural resources. This is what usually we do when we go to the area, is we do research first about the wind resource and also the water resources, everything. Then we come with the building design. So I think it's not going from the top down, but we have to start from the local roots. Yeah.
Okay, so we are very end of our webinar, but still we were going to take some of, okay, there are two questions. One is infrastructure gaps. It's about infrastructure gaps between rural and urban in the main issues. So how we solve the problem to build the infrastructure that's suitable to build the green building, and that related between developer and government. Dr. Sentagi, you have answered, but I'm requesting you again.
Okay.
Elaborate.
Okay. There's one part that I haven't actually what you call it, highlighted. Is also related with the transportation. So I guess what's happening also in the urbanization is because now transportation is really provided between the rural area and the urban cities. And this transportation can actually help a lot in making everything become efficient, including maybe if the rural area needs to use some green materials that's only available by the private sectors in the urban areas or in the city, then if the transportation is well designed, then that could be also easy to move around or do the mobilization of these green materials. But transportation is also included in one of the green buildings criteria.
Okay, so last question is providing green building in Indonesia in terms of percentage. How much percentage is reduced generally on the emissions and climate balance globally for this project? It is very expensive, materials used not entirely available, or technical skills for the project is not that advanced. How would you encourage other countries, especially third world countries, to actually do it? Okay, it's more about replications. Okay.
Yeah, one of the strategies that we can try is CIRDAP, open the knowledge management. Then collecting the best practice for countries that is involved in the network of CIRDAP, for example. Then you got the website and so on and so on, and then try to spread off the informations. It is very effective because sometimes we do not realize that very simple idea we have it, and then I mean simple idea in other country, for example, but by seeing the proof of this simple building, for example, or simple design in other countries, in the website, or we can manage it with the brief video. Then, aha, here in our country, we also have it. So something like that. So we can spread the informations, encouraging the people by showing the very simple best practice, by having a good knowledge management, by website, by LinkedIn, by Instagram, something like that. Yeah, just a simple idea.
Okay, so we are taking the last question from Capiz Ruther. Can locally available materials be used in green building? What will be the possible intervention of the government to encourage people's community to adapt this technology?
Okay,
Yeah, please,
maybe.
Bu Sentagi.
Yeah, okay. We had this agenda already, right, Pak
Yes.
Rachmawan? So, okay, first of all, the easiest way is we have to make the government people and the private sector, the industry, to meet. That is the key point. So they have to sit together. They have to know what's happening. They have to discuss the same ideas towards green building implementation or net zero emission building or whatever the target is. Because what happened to Indonesia is actually something very simple. I will give an example, a very simple example. There is no standard for building dimension. It's very different with other countries like in United States or in other country. If you want to put a door on your house, you just go to Lowe's, you just go to those supermarket, you buy a door, any kind of door type, you can put it on your own, right? You can have it on your own. But in our country, we don't have just very simple thing, which is dimension. So industry that creates prefab materials, they become difficult to sell their product and to get a lot of acceptance from the community because their dimension, they cannot meet with all of the requirements or all the practices of the design that is happening in our society. It is a very big cost just to change, for example, a window pane 1 centimeter larger. They have to change the entire molding process and the entire industrial process. So I think just put them together and have them sit down, and maybe some NGOs or some organization or some people or researcher can do that work.
Thank you, Dr. Rachmawan and Dr. Sentagi, ma'am, sir. Maybe in future it can be more research can be done on these areas. And also in Indonesia, I know there is a very cyclone prone, because Indonesia is an island, right? 77 islands. So you are thus surrounded by the cyclone prone. Some other countries, the earthquake prone. So I believe that in future more research and more concept will be developed based on this green building. So thank you so much. And I have put all the link in this chat box. So if all the participants wants to know more about this Cedsgreeb, you can access their website. And also this entire webinar recording will be placed in our YouTube channel. So whenever you have a chance, go and just put your subscription in the YouTube channel. So recording will be there. And also we will share these slides to all of you. So thank you so much for joining with us. And thank you, Dr. Sentagi, Dr. Rachmawan,